in all the years you and I sat around conference tables at the U and told lies to each other about how great we were as soldiers, I somehow missed that story, and it was chilling to me to hear it when I prepared for the interview last week when we had to cancel, unfortunately. I can't wait to, even though I know what you're going to say, I'm like budding with anticipation to hear you tell it live. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, one of the things that we did, they're called critical incident debriefings. When something bad happened, I would go and my assistant would go and we would meet with the soldiers who were in that incident. I'll tell a funny one first before I talk about a serious one. We went out to a forward operating base one day because not a Humvee, but one of the big trucks got blown up. Nobody was hurt, but our job was to debrief the survivors of the truck. So we started talking. I talked to the driver. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, we hit an IED, and it blew the truck up about 10 feet in the air, and it landed on its side. We were all okay. Next guy, well, what happened? Well, we hit an IED, the truck blew about 20 feet in the air, and it rolled over, but we're all okay. So you can see where this is going. The next guy, oh God, we must have went 40 feet in the air. We did a 360, and we came down, and everybody was okay. So we talked to those guys, everybody was okay, but it was like a fish story. The more you went into it, the bigger the fish got. So in April of 2011, there was 13 days that were terrible. On a Saturday morning at a FOB named Gambari, early in the morning, maybe 9 or 10 o'clock, there's a general staff meeting with Afghani soldiers and U.S. soldiers. So in a conference room, a fellow dressed in an Afghani uniform walked into the conference room, said Allah Akbar, blew himself up. He had on a suicide vest and blew himself up. And I learned about that explosion maybe an hour or two after it had happened. So they called me into the operations center, and there are televisions in there that had a live feed from where this had happened at Gambari. And you could see outside of this building blast patterns where the explosion would happen. At that time, I didn't know, because my company was there, my medical company was there. I didn't know if any of my friends had been hurt or not. And I was told, you need to get down there as quickly as you can. Well, we had had one of our soldiers at our FOB killed a couple days before, and we hadn't buried him yet. And so I said, I'll come as quick as I can, but we got to take business here at home first. So I get down there, and one of my friends, who's a physician assistant, had everything organized. And this is what I had to do. I had to debrief the soldiers in the room where the explosion took place. I debriefed the soldiers who ran towards the explosion. And I debriefed the medical people who treated the wounded. So let me start about the soldiers in the room. These were all 101st Airborne people, so they were regular Army. So this Afghani guy walks into the room. He looks pretty good, but he's kind of a sloppy soldier. He doesn't salute the officers when he walks in the room. And he doesn't have any socks on. Okay, so everybody, they're telling me, it was kind of odd, but, Afghanis being Afghanis, no socks, could have just been a sloppy soldier along with no salute. And they heard him say Allah Akbar, and the next thing they know, there was the boom. They weren't able to react fast enough to have done anything about it. And that was the thing that they were all lamenting. I wish I could have done something, but there wasn't. Yeah. Somebody did yell, get down, was with it enough to yell, get down. And so a lot of people did get down. Those who didn't were hurt or killed. And so when they reflected backwards, they try to put meaning to this whole thing. They think, although they don't know, that he didn't have socks on because he purified his feet before he went in to kill himself. Right. And so all of those people in the room were wounded. A lot of them were medics. And to a person, these medics said to me, Yeah, I had my eardrums blown out and I had a lot of shrapnel wounds. But my first response was, hey, this guy over here is hurt worse than me. And they started treating the wounded.
Mm-hmm.
That was their first response. You
Yeah.
know, even though they were hurt themselves, that was the first response. Now, people in the room who weren't medics, their first thought was, I better get outside and set up a protective barrier because this could just been the first stage
Right.
of the attack. So they're going to out set up a perimeter. So even though they were wounded, that's what they did. And to a person, they all similar stories. Somebody was hurt worse than me. I couldn't hear anything, but it didn't matter. I'm going to go treat the wounded.
Mm.
Then the people that ran towards the room. Okay, so picture yourself Saturday morning, you're getting your coffee and you hear an explosion. All right. Nothing unusual there because it could have been what we call a military controlled detonation, you know. And they just didn't tell us this morning that we were going to do a controlled detonation, but they soon figured out, no, this was an explosion in our conference room. So they all ran towards the explosion. That was their first instinct, to run towards the explosion with no thought at all about being in danger. They ran towards the explosion. And so they started to evacuate the wounded. And they did. Now, the medics that morning, the medical clinic is just like any other family practice clinic on a Saturday morning. Lots of colds and sniffles and blisters and things like that. So they heard the explosion too, and like the people that ran towards the explosion thought, it's a controlled det, no worries, until the ambulances started coming in and started coming and coming and coming. Now, there wasn't a doctor. There was a physician's assistant, and she was there by herself with a bunch of medics. The second physician assistant was coming back to the FOB, and she was in a helicopter over the FOB, and she kept telling the pilots, you got to get me down there. You got to get me down there now. And they wouldn't land because,
no one knows what's going on.
Yeah,
I mean, the chopper could take a second hit, you know.
So they didn't. So the physician assistant and all the medics. Now, the medics, you got to realize, these are all young people, 21, 22, even less. And they all went to work, just like the mass casualty event that we had practiced for. And you know, I can imagine the kind of wounded that showed up that day. Clearly, there would have been shrapnel wounds. Clearly, there might have been catastrophic amputations. Clearly, there, lots and lots and lots of patients all at once.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talked to them, they told me how they figured out how to triage things and how they were going to fix things for the next event. Because they figured, hey, if it happened once, it could happen again. So one of the medics said to me, the biggest problem was finding what we needed. So on her own, she said, okay, I'm going to put the things we needed first at chest level on our shelves. The equipment we needed second, I'm going to put it my waist level. And the things we needed last, I'm going to put at my knee level. All on her own. No one told her to do that, but she reorganized supplies in a way that would make it easier the next time. Now, all the people that were brought in that morning for treatment lived with the exception of one person. And that person had, in medical terms, a condition incompatible with life, which meant that no matter what they would have done, that person was over. They kept that person alive long enough to be evacuated to a bigger medical facility outside the country. And the way I understand it, although I can't verify it, is they kept that person alive long enough so his family from America could come over and be there when he passed. But they were able to keep him alive that long.